Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. I'd like to welcome you to October 1st board meeting. At this time, I'd like to ask Commissioner McCoy if she'll lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and return back. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Let us bow our heads, please. First of all, I want to say that every now and then God let us know who is in power, and that is God. I come before you this morning, Lord, to say we thank you for allowing us to assemble here and make the decisions for our county. I pray that we will make the right decision for Harnett County as well as for the citizens of this county. I'm also standing here to send up a prayer for the people in Asheville. It's a tragedy, and only you can fix this. So, Lord, I ask you, watch over those people. Guide the ones that are going to provide the service for those people. And let us all pray that this country will be a more humble country. In your name I pray. Amen.
All right, at this time, item number 3, Charters for Freedom Foundation Forward Project Presentation. Mr. Lewis, are you present? Mr. Manager, would you cover that, please?
Sure. I'll have the clerk, if she could, bring up the website. So we were approached by Charters for Freedom. Mr. Lewis is over in the western part of the state, and so we didn't hear from him. Knew this might be a possibility. They approached us about the possibility of installing these monuments that you see played on the screen, which have the Constitution, Declaration of Independence, Bill of Rights, and the Civil Rights Law in them. They would build this monument that you see there at no expense to the county. All they request is that they have a location out in our Veterans Park. We've met with the Veterans Council. They have approved that this be installed. So the next step really is to see if the Board of Commissioners is okay with installing these monuments in our park. We believe it to be a proper addition to that park to be able to highlight. We have an area designated which would be on the south side of the park. We have a small area, a small patch of grass that we believe will fit this area. If not, we'll get another area, but we believe there are a couple locations. So just answer any questions that the board may have regarding this possibility.
Any questions for staff? What's the pleasure of the board? Move that we approve this. Okay, put it on consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
All right, item number 4, an update on the Riverside project. Mr. Price.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. Hope everybody is well. Excited this morning to bring with you a hydraulic model study for the Riverside community outside of Irwin. With us this morning, we have a group from Withers Ravenel, who the county is contracted with. We have Mr. Ross Perry, who's the project manager, and Julia Bruneau, who is the staff professional. A lot of time, energy, and effort has been put into this over the last couple of months. We understand the history of what's happened in this particular area. So I think what you're going to see now, as Ross comes and presents to you the hydraulic model, you're going to see the whole entire area of how it's encompassed, what the problems are, how he'll show a model of how the drainage is being impeded, and he'll look at the surface area as far as how flat it is, and then look at options as far as kind of where we're at. And this is exactly what the Board of Commissioners had asked. We have compiled a lot of information. He actually has folks out this week, I think, doing more survey. He's probably about 75% complete with the hydraulic model, but he does have enough information to share a presentation this morning. So I'd like to welcome Ross and Julia to the podium to go through the presentation and then answer any questions that the board may have. So Ross.
Thank you, Coley. All right. Thanks for letting us come here today. Give you a quick update on the Riverside Community Drainage Assessment. Okay, good. There it goes. So just a quick agenda. We'll go through kind of like where the study area is, just make sure we're all on the same page. The purpose and objectives of the study area. We held a public meeting a couple months ago, so we'll briefly go through the results of that. And then what we really want to show is we've set up an existing conditions model detailing the flooding extents and what we're seeing within the study area. And then we'll talk next steps, talk about some potential funding sources to look for in the future, and then we'll take any questions. Just quick introduction. Like Coley said, my name's Ross Perry. I'm the project manager over at Withers Ravenel overseeing this project. I'm North Carolina native, NC State graduate from engineering school. This is Julia. She's one of the staff engineers with us that's been working on this project with me. Virginia Tech grad. And then we've been working closely with Coley and Lynn and Mark. I should have thrown your name up there as well. You've been a great help with the field work. So this is the study area we're looking at. It's the Riverside community. Let's see if I do. Yeah, okay. It's bounded by the Upper Little River to the north, Titan Roberts Road to the west, NC Highway 217 to the south and east, and Cape Fear River to the east as well. Includes Bun Level Irwin Road, Riverside Lane, Beaver Road, Roosevelt Road, as well as the upper portion of the Beaver Dam Swamp Canal and the downstream portion of the Upper Little River. So like Coley quickly mentioned, the purpose and objectives of the study, what we're really hoping to do is ultimately identify potential improvement projects that can be done in this area to help mitigate flooding, both the frequency and severity of flooding. So we started by holding a public meeting, trying to get input, information on potential flooding issues that are observed by the public. The county also provided a lot of input as well. We've taken that along with publicly available topographic data as well as stormwater infrastructure information that the county helped us gather to build a highly detailed model of the existing conditions, and then we're going to use that model to then model potential improvements to see what kind of benefits we may gain. We'll use that model and the benefits that we're seeing to prioritize potential improvement projects. And then once we kind of have a list and an order of recommendations for projects we'd like to see implemented, we're hoping to help the county look at potential funding sources, whether that's grants or loans or other means. The ultimate goal is to help the county get a flood mitigation project implemented in this area. We don't want this to end with just a paper and a report. We'd like to see something built. So this is the overall process. Like I kind of just went through this, but we collected public input and then we also collected data. We built an existing conditions model. Right now we're on the third step where we're working through identifying potential conceptual improvements. I can share with a couple preliminary ones today. We're still just up front. We're still working on several of those. We're still working through those. Once we determine the feasibility and the benefits of those, we'll look at putting cost together so we can assign a price tag to each potential project that we're recommending. We'll wrap all this up into like a master stormwater drainage plan report that we'll provide the county. And then we'll also, we'll come back here and provide another presentation to the board, kind of officially presenting our recommendations for prioritization and potential implementation of a couple projects. And then at the end, we're hoping to get all this wrapped up around in November of this year. And hopefully that will give the county time to take that information and apply it to hopefully some grant applications for the spring 2025 spring grant application season. So like I said, we held a public meeting. It was well attended. We had over 50 attendees. We also sent out a public survey that we provided online and in paper as well. We got over 43 survey responses. I think that says a lot to the passion of this community. We've done these studies in much larger communities and have gotten a fraction of that response. So it was great to see the community get involved. If you can see the map on the right-hand side of the screen, what we did was we tabulated all of the comments and input that we got from both the survey and the public meeting, and we essentially applied dots to the map of where the potential flooding impacts we're seeing. And I know, sorry for the crowd, this is kind of small, but essentially, laser doesn't show up on TV. Most of the complaints are centered around Bun Level Irwin Road at the intersection just north of Beaver Dam Swamp Canal. We had a few, thank you. We had a few to the west off of Riverside and a couple others, but the majority of it are centered around Bun Level Irwin Road, which when we get into topology, that kind of makes sense. And so what we did was we cataloged all of the public input, as well as information that the county provided of known flooding issues, and we broke the study area centered on Irwin Bun Level Road into what we're calling areas of concern. And so these are different areas that most of them have a significant hydraulic feature running through them, some type of stormwater conveyance that we're focused on. I want to point out the area concern number it's not a ranking. We're not ranking these areas of concern by priority. That's simply just labeled north to south, west to east. We're looking at all of them, but we've kind of summarized the issues shown in both. We've got notice of a few residential houses being flooded, especially around Bun Level Road. Most of the flooding seems to be up against structural crawl spaces or in the yards. A lot of the ditches around there hold water. I know there were a lot of complaints of the conveyances, mostly Beaver Dam Swamp and all of its tributaries just not draining, just holding water for long periods of time, which in addition to flood concerns also, creates other hazards, mosquitoes, snakes, other things like that. It's just, from an environmental safety standpoint, it's undesirable. And so we took all that information and we used that to consider potential improvement projects. Before we dive into the actual model, I do want to kind of reiterate, this is a low-lying area. This is the FEMA flood insurance rate map. And you can see the entire study area is within the FEMA 500-year floodplain. This is all flooding just generated from the Cape Fear. The FEMA study doesn't take into account any rainfall or any flooding with actually in the study area. This is all just backwater from the Cape Fear. So FEMA's model is very basic, very simplistic. I did want to point out that you can see in the FEMA model the Beaver Dam Swamp Canal, which is the blue winding south of Bun Level Road, is blue because it actually is inundated during the 100-year storm, which means when the Cape Fear rises during a 1% annual chance storm, it actually backflows all the way up Beaver Dam Swamp Canal all the way to Bun Level Irwin Road. Same for the upper Little River. Its backwater comes all the way up that tributary and actually ties to the 100-year flood elevations in Beaver Dam Swamp. So it all becomes one big interconnected floodplain during a really large storm event. So kind of getting into the flood modeling we've done, I wanted to kind of discuss the design storms. You'll hear us say, like I just said, 100-year storm. For the purpose of our modeling and our assessment, we're focusing on what I'm going to call smaller storm events. These are still significant rainfall events. So we're looking at the 2-year, 24-hour storm, the 10-year, and the 25-year. And so what that means is that's NOAA's dedication. The 2-year is the peak storm event you would expect to see statistically, looking at all past rainfall events, only once every 2 years. 10-year would be once every 10 year, 25-year once every 25 years, and so on. And you can see the rainfall values that NOAA associates with those. So a 2-year is 3.7 inches of rainfall over 24 hours. 10 is essentially 5.6, and then the 25-year is 6.7. What I do want to point out is in the past 2 months, we have had 3 storms, and I put this presentation on Friday, so I didn't have final rainfall depth for Hurricane Helen. It ended up not hitting this area so bad, but it was still a couple inches of rainfall. So I do want to point out that we've had 3 storms in the past 2 months that have all exceeded a 1 or 2 year storm event. And so statistically, we should only be seeing those every 2 years. We just had 3 within a 2-year period. So from a design standpoint, in our industry, these 2-year, 10-year, 25-year values are you got to take those with a grain of salt. We're designing systems now to 100-year events where possible, because we're seeing 100-year storms every couple years, especially with the hurricanes that we're seeing. So I just kind of want to point that out. But for the purpose of this study, because we have that influence from the Cape Fear, as the Cape Fear comes up and kind of backwaters into this, there's only so much infrastructure can do to improve that. We're really going to focus on the lower end storms to relieve that nuisance flooding. So we're looking at the 2-year, 10-year, and 25-year in our model. So this is just a real quick sneak peek at kind of what our model looks like, kind of behind the scenes. So you can see the really high resolution, detailed topographic information. This is publicly available information that we got from FEMA's Department of Safety. They have it available for all of North Carolina. We took building footprints and burned those in, so you can see how the buildings are elevated to allow flow to go around them, so we can very clearly see where water intersects buildings. And then what you're seeing with the blue, and I can get it to play one more time. So this is a very quick 24-hour storm sped up over a 3-second period. But you can see the storm come in, and right now the video is still going. And what I'm trying to iterate here is that the storm came in, it peaked. A lot of that water does not drain. So you can see a lot of the surface water does kind of go away, but all of the tributaries, most of Beaver Dam Swamp, they stay inundated. And this model runs a good 12 hours past the storm event. And so it's just not draining. And so that's one of the first major concerns we're seeing out here, is we're just not getting drainage. This is the overall study area. So you can see it with an aerial laid on it. And so you can kind of see the extent of our model. So we have this detailed model built for the entire study area. We're not piecemealing it together. The water surfaces in this model interact with each other, and I'll show this in a few slides. Water flows to the north sometimes, and then at the tail end of the storm, it will reverse and start flowing to the south. This is a very low-lying, pretty complex area to model. But you can see in the little one on the left, you can kind of see our starting conditions where we have standing water preset within Beaver Dam Swamp. This is just based on field observations. Like Coley mentioned, we've got field crews out there today and possibly tomorrow. They're taking survey shots of standing water elevations, as well as walking Beaver Dam Swamp Canal to check for any debris or anything that would cause backup of water. And then in the middle, you can just see the 24-hour storm event. I think what we're showing here is a 10-year 24-hour event. And then just on the right is just a snapshot of like the peak inundation areas. And so this is just kind of show you the extent of the model. We've got 4 areas highlighted with yellow circles. I just want to zoom in on those areas because we went out there, but also Lynn and her staff went out there and took pictures immediately following Tropical Storm Debbie, which lined up pretty closely with a 2-year storm. And so just kind of show you our model results. Oh, well, sorry. This is what I was talking about, the complexity of the drainage area. And I know this is hard for you guys to see, but the yellow areas, which are mostly centered to the north, are all of the tributaries that flow to the upper Little River. The red arrows, which is mostly to the south, and then the center of the study area, flow to show the flow patterns to the south, what drains to Beaver Dam Swamp Canal. And then we have a few areas on the eastern side that drain directly into the Cape Fear. What I do want to point out is in the middle of the project area, there is a wide, winding tributary. Depending on the level in the upper Little River or depending on the level in Beaver Dam River, that large tributary reverses flow directions. So when we run a storm event, it may start flowing to the upper Little, and then as the upper Little comes up, whether it's due to backwater from the Cape Fear or just drainage coming down into it, that flow actually reverses and starts draining back towards Beaver Dam Swamp. Just to kind of reiterate the complexities of this. So kind of zooming in, this is Bun Level Irwin Road, right next to the Agricultural Center. There's a big loop, drainage ditch that loops up through there. And there's a driveway that goes to the northern section. You can see that was located within the area concern 9. So you can see a picture of that immediately following Tropical Storm Debbie. And you can see that there's standing water almost right up to the edge on either side of that driveway. That matches very closely with the peak inundation for our model. You can see the slit going through the top where the driveway doesn't quite overtop. And then same for down to the south where that tributary crosses under Bun Level Irwin Road. There's a residence there that's got a propane tank out to the side. We've been using that as a point of reference because that's even when we were out there, there's standing water in the vicinity of that, and you can see the pictures taken immediately after the tropical storm. You can see there's several inches, if not a foot, out near the propane tank of water, of standing water. That matched very well with our model at peak inundation post the storm event in that same area. One thing I will point out for these slides, we've got what they're called particle tracers to show the flow. I just want to iterate as we move on some of these. The water in this area does not move that fast. That is an incredible exaggeration. It's just to show the direction and general flow of the water. The velocities of the flow out here are little to none. This water is almost stagnant even during a storm event as the waters come up and come out. It moves very slowly. But you can see it goes under the culvert. There's a culvert in Bun Level Irwin Road, so that water comes up and around, and then it has to go through a culvert, and then you can see the edge of the floodplain for Beaver Dam Swamp in the corner. So just kind of iterating another area. So this is just to the southeast of what we just looked at, so immediately south of the Agricultural Center. You can see the standing water in the ditches and in the open space area to the south. And then there's significant standing water around the utility station at the eastern intersection. And just comparison, once again, our model results matched up very closely with what we were seeing after the hurricane for similar rainfall events. You've got over a foot of standing water next to the utility station, and then the ditch and open space area are both full with water. And so just zoomed in on just another area. This is a residence right off of Bun Level Irwin Road. This is located in what we identified as Area of Concern 7. So you can see in the pictures they've got standing water right up against the crawl space. And once again, this is like a 2-year storm event. This is a relatively small storm event for what we're modeling, but they've got standing water right up against the crawl space. And then you can see in our model at the peak area those flood depths. You can see the square cut out of the inundation blue area. That's the house. With the water flowing around it. Those depths of anywhere from like 2 to 6 inches matched up pretty closely with the model as we have it built today. Another area we first identified this in the model because there was a significant water surface elevation drop, and so we asked Lynn and Mark to go out there, and they actually took these pictures for us. At the southern end of our study area along Beaver Dam Swamp Canal, there was what appeared to be in the model like a 2-foot drop in water surface elevation, which in this area it's so low, it's so flat, that's a significant delta in water surface elevations. And so they went out there and took a look, and there's actually a beaver dam, which we have pictures of, right at the end of an old driveway cutting through the Stewart's property. And I guess it's been there long enough to at least where the LiDAR actually picked it up. Then the LiDAR was flown, I think, in 2019. And so the model captured this, and we've tweaked the model to incorporate actual like field conditions based on what we were seeing. And it's kind of hard to tell with the vegetation and stuff, but there was a 10 to 8 inch drop between one side of the beaver dam and the other, which once again doesn't sound like a big deal, and I'll show this in a slide coming up, 10 to 18 inches of backed up water in this low-lying area is very significant. And so with all that said, we have the model up and running. We've taken the pictures, we've taken some of the public comments we've got to verify some of the results. We feel pretty happy with our current existing conditions model. We're still tweaking little things here and there as we kind of zoom in on specific areas, but we feel pretty good. And so what we've started to do is take that model and implement potential improvements. And so what we started with, and this is just a list of kind of what we're working through right now. What we started with was, well, what if we do some significant maintenance on Beaver Dam Swamp Canal? What if we remove the beaver dams? Like I said, we've got staff out there walking it today looking for any other obstructions, any other debris that may be restricting flow. What if we get that removed and allow Beaver Dam Swamp to lower and drain quicker? How does that impact the upper area of the study area? We're also looking at improving stormwater infrastructure. For this area, that mostly means roadside ditches and culverts. Most of the culverts are located under Bund Level Irwin Road. Bund Level Irwin Road cuts right through the middle of the study area, and it acts like a giant levee. And so the water builds up mostly on the north side, which is where most of the areas of concern are. That then the only way for it to get to Beaver Dam Swamp where it wants to drain out is through these culverts. And so we've Mark and Lynn's team went out, they took survey shots, they collected pipe size, material, and got us all the information on all the main culverts that allow flow back and forth there. A lot of them have debris built up in front of them, or they've got stagnant water built up behind them. They're not just operating at full efficiency right now. And then in other cases, we're looking at actually upsizing some of those culverts. And so we can kind of look at a couple of these areas. And so, like I said, so the first, I'll go back. We're also, and so that's what we're focusing on first. We're kind of looking at the low-hanging fruit, right, as far as cost and implementation, like replacing a couple culverts, cleaning out ditches, cleaning out culverts, and doing maintenance to existing like main hydraulic features. We're also looking at adding connectivity. There are several areas, like I said, that drain immediately to the Cape Fear. We're looking at potentially connecting a couple of the areas of concern to drain to the east to avoid Beaver Dam Swamp Canal altogether, and just to drain directly out to the Cape Fear. Because the Cape Fear, even during like a 2 or 10 year storm, only comes up to an elevation of about 8. For reference, the study area and Bund Level Road, everywhere we're looking at, is an elevation of about 105 to 108. So there is 20 feet plus of fall between our study and the Cape Fear if we can get the water to go that way. So that's something we're also looking at. And then the last 2 options we're looking at are kind of the big ones. These would be the big capital improvements. Like, what if we actually dredged Beaver Dam Swamp? Like, not just maintenance it. What if we actually lowered the water surface through it to get full flow once again, kind of restore it to its original design. And then we're also looking at potentially implementing like stormwater pump stations for those low-lying areas that it's just really hard to get drainage out of. What if we actually pumped it? So those have large dollar amounts associated with them. And so we're looking at modeling those to see what is the ultimate benefit, and does that cost-benefit ratio make sense? Is it feasible? And so kind of working through those options, this is a profile of the upper portion of Beaver Dam Swamp Canal, and I just want to show this to kind of make a point. You can see the brown line is the LIDAR. It's the current day existing topo. And you can see the giant jump right at the far left end of the profile. That's Bund Level Irwin Road. There's a kind of jump right in the middle. That's approximately where the Beaver Dam was. And then you see there's a drastic, I say drastic, it's only 2 feet. There's like a 2-foot drop off, and then it flows out to NC 217. And so what we're seeing here is this blue line is essentially the backwater from that existing Beaver Dam. And so the point I'm trying to make is that just having that 10 or foot of backwater, or it's a little higher like when it's actually flowing over the Beaver Dam like during a storm event, that backwater comes all the way up and through the culvert and past Bund Level Irwin Road. So Beaver Dam Swamp, getting it to drain is a huge component of the study. And then I also have on here just to once again iterate how flat this area is, ideally, Beaver Dam Swamp Canal would have a consistent slope from Bun Level Irwin Road all the way to NC 217. That's the dashed green line. Even with that ideal slope, with that ideal drop spread out across the whole way to allow positive drainage, that's only a slope of 0.04%. So that's still incredibly flat, which is one of the issues and why maintenance is an issue is when you have slopes that flat, the water moves very slowly. And when your water is moving very slowly, all the debris drops out. If you have floating trees, branches, sediment, all of that drops out and slowly fills in the canal over time, which just gives you less conveyance. And so this is just kind of a sneak peek at some of the comparisons we're doing. Like I said, we're still working on these. We're still running several scenarios for different concept plans. But we're just showing, in this one, we kind of looked at that first area that we zoomed in on. In this one, the illustration on the left shows the difference between existing conditions and post improvements at the peak of the storm. And on the left, it's showing the difference between them 6 hours after a storm event. And so and the table up in the top right kind of helps put some depth to it. But essentially, the improvements we're proposing here are the low-hanging ones. So we're looking at improving Beaver Dam Swamp, and what I mean by improve is just remove debris, get it flowing as best as we can, remove the beaver dams, and then also upsize the roadway culvert under Bun Level Irwin Road, which is what I have circled in red. And so what you can see is, as far as improvements go, with just these simple ones, the peak inundation, and we've got a couple areas marked on the map for reference, but like immediately behind the culvert, the depth of water during the peak of the storm goes from a foot deep to 4 inches deep. So that's a drop of 8 inches, which may not sound significant, but in an area this flat, this low line, that it's pretty significant. And then you can also see we're seeing a drop higher up, kind of behind the open space area in the ag center. Like we're seeing a drop from essentially a foot of flow down to another 4 inches. So they definitely help with the peak levels. And then post storm event in this area, we're still seeing like water hang around after a storm event, even with the improvements. That's just how slow the water drains out of these areas. But there is some improvements. We're seeing it go from 4 inches to like a little less than 1 inch, and then in a few areas it drains completely. I'm looking at a couple other areas. This is another one where same thing. We're assuming that Beaver Dam Swamp is kind of cleaned out. We're upsizing a couple the roadway culvert again under Bun Level Road, and we also assume that some of the roadside ditches and some of the other driveway culverts have been cleaned out to allow for full flow through this area. You can see in some of the areas, like immediately upstream of the culvert under Bun Level Irwin Road, there was essentially no difference, even with those improvements. And so, and then if you look on the other side where the water is coming down from the residential area in the vicinity of the utility station that's right there, same thing. Where even with the improvements, we're seeing very, very minor drops, if any at all. Where we are seeing the improvements is after the storm event, and they're still minor, but there are some, but they allow those inundation areas to drain completely. Whereas 6 hours after the storm event, we had 4 inches of water on the upstream side of Irwin Bun Level Road on both sides of River Road. Now we have 0. So it allows it to drain out, but I'm just trying to set expectations. Like this area drains slowly, and even with like improvements, we're still seeing inundation areas build up. So we'll look at this other area. So this is the house that had flooding up against the crawl space. This one shows some of the best improvements, and the main reason for that is all the evidence in looking at the topology and all the evidence in the field suggests there should be a culvert under Bun Level Road that drains the water where those 3 houses are to the south side of Bun Level. No one can find that culvert. It may exist, but if it is, it's completely blocked. I know a previous study done looked for it. They couldn't find it. I know Mark and his team went out there. They couldn't find it. We poked around. We also couldn't find it. So in the model, we're assuming it's completely ineffective, that it's essentially not there. And so by just placing a culvert in this area, we're still seeing some backwater, and we can look at making the culvert even larger. But essentially all that water, that stagnant water, almost all of it drains, which makes sense. That one's kind of a common sense one. And so this was certainly a simple one. But what we're doing is we're going up and down Bun Level, we're going in the study area, and we're doing this in the model. We're increasing culvert sizes, we're replacing culverts with bigger culverts, and we can hit run and within like a few minutes instantly be able to tell the difference. And so we're working our way through. Here's just one other one. This is farther to the west in the study area off Tim Roberts Road at this intersection. All we did for this one was just include the model, assuming that the existing culverts just get cleaned out. They're severely blocked right now, and that all the roadway ditches in that, within 100 feet or so of that intersection also get cleaned out. And you can see almost most of the inundation post the storm event is allowed to drain. And so we're looking at, anything from just maintenance all the way up to, infrastructure replacement. And so as we go through each proposed improvement, and like I said, I just want to iterate, those are just examples. We're looking at every culvert, every ditch. We're looking all over the study area. But as we go through, we're making a list of potential improvements, and the goal is to prioritize them. And so the way we do that is we came up with a couple of prioritization factors. The first one we're looking at is the condition of the existing infrastructure. So if we're looking at replacing a culvert, is that culvert in good, fair, poor, or unknown condition, like the one we think exists but we can't even find? And we'll give it a score based on that. We'll also look at, does implementing this improvement, how does it mitigate flooding? Does it mitigate flooding from a 2-year, but we still see it in the 10-year? Or does this mitigate flooding all the way up to a 25-year storm? And then also, what type of flooding are we mitigating? Is this just relieving standing water in the front yard, or is this pulling water off of the foundation of houses? Is the road overtopping in this area, and now it's not? And so we're scoring each based on the flooding frequency and the flooding severity that it alleviates. We'll also assign potential costs, a budget to each potential improvement project, and then that one's self-explanatory. The lower the cost, the lower the score. The higher the cost, the higher the score. And then we're also considering what we're calling jurisdiction. Is the project to be implemented, is it on county-owned property? Is it in an NCDOT right-of-way, or is it on private property? So each of those gets scored differently. Usually with county-owned property being the easiest for the county to implement, NCDOT being the next, and then obviously if it's on private property, that's a different beast. If you have good relationships with the property owners, that may not be a huge hindrance to the project. If you don't, getting easements we've seen that kill projects. And so we take all these, we weigh them each one, and this is just an example. We're not stuck on these. We'll work with the county staff to come up with different weighing schemes. But essentially, each one weighs. In this example, the severity of flooding relieved got weighed the highest at 35%, with the condition of the existing infrastructure being weighed the least. We'll weigh each one. We'll come up with a score for each one, and they'll kind of help us prioritize which areas. Another thing we're also considering that's a little harder to build in is a lot of these projects depend on other projects. So like maintaining and cleaning out Beaver Dam Swamp. Without doing that, some of these other projects may have no benefit, if that makes sense. And so upsizing a culvert that drains to a swamp that won't drain has no benefit. So we're prioritizing them, and then we're also kind of ranking them in order that would need to be done. And so next steps. So right now we're working on these. We're still going through conceptual projects. With our next meeting, we're hoping to have this wrapped up in early November. We'll have a list of potential projects and their associated benefits. We'll have them prioritized, and we'll have our recommendation. We'll summarize all that in the drainage report that we'll present to council. That is essentially the scope of our current study. But looking beyond that, like we briefly talked about at the beginning, we want to take that report and help the county look and identify potential funding sources, whether it's grants, loans, or earmarks, or something along those lines. And then once you have a project chosen and you've got funding lined up for it, the next step is to get full-blown engineering design and permitting done for it. And then once that's done, put it out to bid, get it constructed. And so I just kind of want to briefly talk about some potential funding sources that we've been working with other municipalities with. The first three are kind of the big ones. They're also the ones that are up in the air. So the first one, the Disaster Relief Mitigation Fund, that one's one you can apply for at any time, but it usually has a lot of applicants and is a pretty strict review process. There's also the LASSI program through the ARPA, which is the Local Assistance of Stormwater Infrastructure Investments Program. We had a lot of success over the past year or two getting stormwater. It's a federally funded grant program specifically for stormwater-based projects. We've had a lot of luck over the last few years getting projects awarded funding through this one. The funding for this in 2025 is up in the air. They have not announced what the budget will be, so it's unknown if it'll be anything similar to what they have in 2024. So it's something that we're keeping an eye on. If it gets funded again, it's a great opportunity. It's just unknown at this point. The third one we're looking at is a BRIC grant. This is through FEMA, the Building Resilient Infrastructure and Communities grant. This is another one you can apply at any time. It just has a very long lead time. It usually, from the time you submit your application, and the application, if you've been through one, is intense. You have to do a very, very detailed cost analysis, benefit ratio. That's spreadsheets and spreadsheets they make you fill out. But once you get the application submitted, it takes FEMA usually 18 to 24 months to review the application and let you know your funding source. So this is kind of a long game grant. The three at the bottom usually don't offer quite the same amount of funding as the top three, but they are shorter and, in my opinion, easier. The first one's the Golden Leaf Grant. The board meets every February, April, June, August, October, December, so every 3 months or so, to review applicants. Sometimes they'll pass and they'll postpone. If they only get like a handful, they'll pass and they'll postpone to the next one. But essentially, they're awarding grants every 3 to 6 months. They upped the cap for in 2024 to around 700,000. Our understanding is that it's likely to go back down to the previous cap of 250. But it's still it's a good source of funding, even if it's just supplemental funding, depending on how much your project costs. But for example, I mean, applications for this, you can submit an application as soon as December 26th for funding on this one. Another one is the NC Land and Water Fund. Same deal. You can submit in January, April, and August. So it's an ongoing review board, multiple times a year. So the next application for this one would be the 15th of January, 2025. Our experience with this, the Land and Water, they usually award in the amounts of somewhere between $100,000 to $200,000. Just to kind of give you an idea. And then the last one, the Stream Flow Rehabilitation Assistance Program. We threw this one on there. Just this one would be geared more towards your actual your stream conveyances, like Beaver Dam Swamp, or making improvements there. They haven't announced yet their 2025 funding, but I wanted to throw it up here just because it is geared specifically toward reestablishing flow in streams, which seems to be a main concern, especially with Beaver Dam Swamp. And so, I mean, with all that said, we've got options. There are certainly other options out there we can look at. I know Withers has a funding administration program that has staff from multiple of these agencies and knows them in and out. We can certainly help you guys establish, which ones you're eligible for, which ones you're not, pretty quickly, and certainly help with applications. But that's essentially the next steps. I mean, that's what we're looking at. So we're going to continue looking at potential improvement projects, rank those, make our official recommendations, and then get you the final study and hopefully help you guys acquire funding. But if you have any questions, that's where we're at.
Well, I'm Commissioner Barbara McCoy. That is in my district.
Okay.
I have been working on this for over 4 years.
Okay.
And this is the first report that I've heard that gives me any positivity about helping those people. I want to say, and I don't want to see anybody, I don't care what color, race, or creed you are, to live under those conditions. Those people are living in houses with water coming up in their floors, coming up in their air conditions. And that standing water, mosquitoes are terrible. And I know for a fact that it's creating some health conditions there. So this is the first time I've heard anybody say that those people need help. I've heard several times ain't nothing can be done. But you're telling me there is some hope. Now, in 2014, there was a COVID put on at the Bun Level Irvin Road because the water was standing so high, the traffic couldn't come through there. So what they did was reroute the traffic to 217 in order to get in Littleton. Because a lot of our county employees use that route to come to work. So I'm proposing and hoping, Coley, I thank you for all you've done. I'm hoping and praying that you all will find the grants that's needed for this and move this for these neighbors. Now, the same report was given to me about Cedar Grove, where the water was flooding out the churches, people's land and yards and all, but the DOT met with us. And it was fixed. And that's why I've been so passionate about this. Because it can be done. It's going to take some time. I'm listening to your report. I realize it's going to take some time. But these people deserve better than just our talk. So I appreciate you. I appreciate your report. I appreciate you looking finding the funds, telling us which direction to go into the funds, because this is a very important project. Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Any more questions, Presenter? Thank you, sir.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, item number 5, discuss request for authorization to submit a Great Trail State Program Grant application for the land and easement acquisition to the South River Road Greenway. Mr. Davis.
All right, thank you. So back in 2021, the board approved a bicycle pedestrian greenway plan, which had 7 different priority spines that were all throughout the county. Top project we had on this greenway plan was the Greenway Trail from Raven Rock to Lillington, which is kind of what we're here today to talk about, this acquisition of that. Obviously, it does provide a lot of benefits, not only for the county. It does connect the state park to downtown Lillington, which spruces up economic development for their town and their businesses. Also health benefits for the county. It also relieves some stress from Raven Rock, possibly with some parking and some overcrowding that they have. But most importantly, this became the top project because the county was actually donated this railroad easement from Heidelberg, which most of us probably know as Hanson Aggregates, changed names, in 2020. And it runs all the way from the water plant in Lillington to the corner of Jim Christian Road and South River Road. So the county actually owns this railroad easement. The biggest problem with it is a railroad easement, not a greenway easement. So if we want to go out there and build a railroad on it today, we could, but we can't put a greenway trail on it. So that's why what we want to do is change that to a greenway easement. Obviously this project was citizen led all the way back 2010, it was given to economic development to kind of look at this project, and obviously it hasn't gone anywhere until we got the easement. But now we're a little bit better as far as readiness. The good news is it is a railroad easement too, so it is built up. So when we look at the readiness of construction, it's already a little bit higher than normal levels. So we're not looking at building bridges and railroads, or not railroads, boardwalks and that type of stuff. So it's a little bit cheaper cost for us. So we've been working on a grant with the Great Trails State Program with Development Services. Emma's actually done most of the work on this. And this is a new grant for new trail development and trail extensions. Obviously, y'all are aware of the Great Trails State stuff that was going on last year that we also participated in. This came part of that process. There are multiple things you can apply for this grant, including planning and feasibility, design and engineering, construction, maintenance of existing trails. But right now we're looking at the acquisition. That's one of the 5 pieces we can do. The acquisition sounds kind of weird because we already own it, so we're not really acquiring it, but we are looking at possibly changing the way that looks. Instead of it being an easement, possibly looking at some fee simple acquisition of this instead of actually doing the easement. Now there are some parcels that we'll look at just converting the easement just because of the way that they're set up. We don't want to break a parcel in half by acquiring that. We keep the easement on that one. There is a $100,000 minimum for acquisition. The county's looking for a little bit more than that, but the county is a Tier 2 county per this grant, and so we're actually eligible for $2 of grant funds for every dollar we spend. So a little bit better for us. We're looking at a total maximum cost of $450,000 for this grant. I do think that's a little higher, but we do have fixed costs that we can put in there, like appraisals and environmental phase 1 studies and that type of stuff. But as far as the cost of the acquisition, this is obviously going to vary a little bit once we get the appraisal. So looking at $300,000 for grant funds, and then $150,000 for the county funds that we put in this project. The county does have this match available in the Parks and Recreation Capital Reserve Fund and that has a Greenways line for construction. And we did get public input on this. We did have a public input process for this actual grant about a month ago. It had about 15 people there, which we were proud of, and obviously had an overwhelmingly positive response to this project. So I think the community sees the input or the positive input it would have. Timeline for this grant is it is due November 12th. And we would not get the award until early 2025. So we wouldn't know till then. Probably looking at about a 12 to 18 month process for the whole, after we get the grant funding for the appraisals, the environmental studies, and then contacting the property owners for this process. So.
Questions from staff?
I have a question. Is the $450,000 is that the match from the county?
No, 150 from the county is what we're asking for. It was 300,000 from the state for this project. So we would get 300,000. The county would put in 150. We would get 300.
Okay, that's what I want to know.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
What's the pleasure of the board? Consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Mr. Locklear, discuss request to approve the FAMPO boundary assessment update and memorandum of understanding.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. FAMPO, the Fayetteville Area Metropolitan Planning Organization, also known as FAMPO, is requesting that we update the memorandum of understanding for them. This request, the changes are obviously from FAMPO themselves, so I'm just kind of relaying the message this morning, but the changes were required by the Federal Highway Administration, NCDOT, and it includes FAMPO board membership requirements and general language clarification. I've reviewed it myself. I only saw one minor change. I've already spoke with Hank at FAMPO. It had to do with the way that we were titling the representative for the TCC, and we've already made that change. So otherwise, I don't see any issues.
Any questions from staff?
No, we're all good.
It was easy.
Okay, put it on the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
I think I'm the next one also. The next request that we have comes from Development Services. Services, as you're aware, we have been trying to work with a consultant for our on-call transportation planning consultant for our transportation needs for the county. We had originally chose LJB, and I came before the board to request that we work with them. And going through the process of negotiations with those folks, they had a change in their leadership where the person that we would be working with directly is no longer with LJB. And so it really changed the way that what they had originally brought to us. So we are respectfully asking that we go to our second choice, which is Kittleson and Associates, and start negotiations with those folks for those folks to come on board as our transportation consultant.
Pleasure of the board. Put it on consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
All right, number 8 and number 9, Mr. Frank is out of place today, assisting with air ops and rescue operations in the mountains. We want to set those over until he's back. Is that right, Mr. Manager?
Yes, sir.
Until he's back, set it on for next week, or you think we need to give it 2 weeks?
We'll do. Once we've had a meeting with, we're going to talk to the advisory board at the committee and discuss these further.
We'll just leave it open for
Yes,
now.
we'll bring it back when we're ready. Thank you, sir.
All right, let's go to number 10, discuss a request to approve fee increases for influenza, pneumonia, and COVID vaccines. Ms. Johnson?
All right, good morning. So I'm here to request fee increases for flu, COVID, and pneumonia vaccines. This increase is due to the increased cost to us this year. So we would like to increase our Fluzone flu vaccine to $23. It's up from $20. Our Fluad vaccine to $84. That's an increase from $63. And Flucelvax flu vaccine to $37, which is up from $24. We also would like to request to increase COVID-19 vaccine to $164. That's increased from $143. Also, the administration fees for flu and pneumonia have increased this year to $31.01, and that is up from $29. So we are requesting to increase those.
Okay. Questions from the staff?
Put it on the agenda.
Okay, put it on consent agenda, Madam
Okay,
Clerk.
thank
Ms.
you.
Johnson. All right, item number 11, discuss a request to approve North Carolina Department of Transportation Integrated Mobility Division application for 2025. Blevins.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, board members. This is our annual requirement for the Rural Operating Assistance Program. This particular year, we are allocated $281,152. In addition, with the allocation, we're also requesting the board approve authorizing the county manager and the finance director to sign off on it. They're the ones that actually apply for it. In this particular case, we will have allocated $107,965 for the Elderly and Disabled Transportation Assistance Program, $16,392 for the Employment Transportation Assistance Program, and then $156,795 for the Rural General Public Program. So all that together is the $281,152. Are there any questions?
What is the general public?
It's the Dollar Ride. That's
The
what-
Dollar Ride?
The Dollar Ride, that's what supplements the Dollar Ride program.
Okay. Dollar Ride? I'm still not understanding what you're
So,
saying.
I'm sorry, it's a commonly used term across the state, but it's where people pay to get on.
Oh, okay,
You know what I mean? Like if they're going to work or something, they don't fit any other program,
right.
they can pay
They
to
can
get on.
Get on that program.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I think that's a good thing.
Okay. Pleasure, board. Consent agenda. All right. Mr. Blevins, I believe you're next.
I am. Thank you very much. So this is the 5311 capital grant agreement to purchase 2 vehicles for this upcoming year. I believe the approved fiscal budget 2024 on the bottom is incorrect. It should be 25. So I just want to notate that. However, there's 2 vehicles that we anticipate trying to purchase, and one of them is the Ford Transit vans, the big tall ones. This one has a lift, and the other one is a cutaway, which is, you can see that little round they're very large, but this one doesn't have a lift. And then, again, once we receive those, we take the vehicles they're replacing, and either the county uses them or we sell them. So it's just an agreement. I forgot to mention, I'm sorry, that the match is $22,000, 10% of the $220,000 total.
Okay, questions from staff? For staff? Okay, put it on the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Blooms. Mr. Hall, discuss a request to approve updates to technology use policy. Do you have your?
You know it's bad when I need backup. No, this is pretty straightforward. So the lovely state has decided to make a new state law around accessing inappropriate material on technology. Really, this law just allows the government to come on, or all local entities, all local governments to be on the same page when it comes down to unseemly conduct, specifically pornography. And it's just outlining, what we should do and what we shouldn't do in cases when pornography is found on technology or somebody is viewing that type of stuff on our technology. So we had most of the stuff was already in the policy, but because of the state law, they asked us to put in specific wording. And Chris has got all that typed up in there on pages 12 and 13. So basically just reiterates the need for us not to tolerate pornography or anything along those lines on our technology here at Harney County.
Mr. Pell, we on solid legal ground?
Yes, sir. The changes are just compliant with what the law is, and the law requires by January 1 to either adopt a policy, you don't already have one, or update your policy. We had a policy on this, but this is just updating to be compliant with what the law is, and then a new reporting structure that's required of us if there's any access.
So we can hide behind your E&O insurance?
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
Okay, that's why I asked you.
Okay. And then since we were having to make a change, there's one point of clarification that I'd like to update on page 16 around personally identifiable information and how it's being sent. Some of our recent compliance audits has asked us to kind of change some of the wording just to make it as clear as possible. So it's the same thing, just stated in a clearer way. And so basically, don't send personal identifiable information, medical records, tax information, any of that stuff over unencrypted means, which basically means don't send it in a plain email. Do use some other means to share that information. So, any questions on these two?
All right, the consent agenda, Madam Clerk. Thank you, Mr. Hall, Mr. Pell. Looks like you're up again. Discuss request to enter into an option to purchase with Samick Corporation.
Yes, Mr. Chairman. So the next two items are related to the Samick project we have going on, the industrial park on 301 that Stephen's been working on, and the property was acquired with Mr. Snow's help. So previously, you all approved an MOU that laid out this option to purchase and also the lease agreement. But now we're actually entering into it. So I won't go into great detail, but the highlight in general is that Samick has bought the first 13, approximately 13 acres to build the first building. The county purchased approximately the other 50 acres that are there. And as part of this deal is that Samick would have the option to purchase as a whole or a piece at a time of that 50 acres that we purchased to build the next shell building. They have this option term is for 8 years, so they have 8 years to take down, again, a piece at a time or all of it. And then once they purchase a piece of property, they have essentially 5 years to build a shell building on there. If they don't do so, then the county has the option to purchase that property back and re-advertise it to sell it again. But this option, it just lays out that as they exercise the option, they'll have to purchase it for fair market value, which will be done through an appraisal process. And then the same thing would work as if they fail to build the building, we'll buy it back for fair market value using that same process. So that's it in a nutshell in the option to purchase. Along with this, if it's approved, we will record a memorandum of the option to purchase with the register of deeds just in a couple paragraphs, just lays out in general that there's this option for those 50 acres. I'm happy to answer any questions regarding the option to purchase.
Questions, Mr. Pell?
And I
Go
ask
ahead
that,
with 15.
yes, sir. And ask for that to be on the consent agenda if that's it.
You got that, Madam Clerk?
All right, the lease agreement, that's the second part of this deal. So as I just mentioned, that Salmon is purchasing that first acreage, and they're going to build a shell building there. And what this lays out is that if they are unable to sell or lease the building as they're building it before shell's certification, we would then lease the building. So once the building is built and they don't have a tenant or it's sold, and the building gets its certification, it's permitted, we'll lease the building up to 2 years. And in doing so, the term during those 2 years, in year one, we'll pay a little over $117,000 per month, and in year two would be $121,000 per month. This is how something very similar is done in Lee County. They've had a number of these projects. I think they've only had in one instance where they had to pay any lease payments, and it was for a short period of time before they sold it. So the hope is that this thing will be leased out or sold prior to us actually having to spend the money. But if that happens to be the case, we'll do so. Unlike a traditional lease, we would not use this building for any other purpose other than for marketing events. So we may hold an event out there, but otherwise we're not going to be using this building. And so your traditional items on what we'd be on the hook for will not be in there. So the maintenance of the building, HVAC and all that, that will be on Salmon to maintain the building and all that. The only thing we'll be responsible for is we'll cut the grass and everything outside, since we're going to be maintaining the other 50 acres out there. And if we do hook up any utilities or use any utility out there, we'll be responsible and for any trash that's generated for any events. But otherwise, Salmon will be taking care of this building. But again, just asking that the board approve this lease agreement, and happy to answer any questions.
Questions for staff? It's a pleasure to put on the consent agenda, Madam Clerk.
Thank you.
Mr. Pell.
Chairman, I could want to make one comment. What the other next step that we'll see is that we do have an MOU that will be done between I-95, I-40 Alliance Group regarding that purchase, and that's the next thing that we're working on related to this project, so that once that's done, then they can make their payment to the county for their share of the land.
Yeah, there's understanding that they'll share in the cost of all this, and then we'll work out the repayment agreement. So there's an agreement principle we just got to get in writing and before the board here. So.
All right, thank you, sir. Item number 16, discuss a request to approve a professional services letter of agreement related to the Jetport runway land acquisition. Mr. Trout?
Thank you, Chairman. Exciting that we're making this next step as we continue the efforts in order to do our runway extension at our Jetport. We need to have this professional service letter agreement approved in order for us to begin the steps necessary with our engineer of record, Parish and Partners. Answer any questions that you may have. We expect to need to purchase the additional land in order to be able to extend that runway.
Very good. On consent agenda, Madam Clerk. All right, item number 17, discuss a request to approve the school resource officer agreement with the town of Lillington.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. After some discussion with the town of Lillington, we made the decision that for the SRO for the town of Lillington, that we would enter a one-year agreement in order to cover the current school year. So we've negotiated that. The town of Lillington has approved it and would ask that the board approve it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Let me ask a question. Would that cover all the schools? All the schools in Lillington, England?
It does not cover Lillington Shawtown. The town of Lillington made the decision that since it actually sits outside their town limits, that they would request that the county cover SRO for that school. And so in this year's budget, we added money into the budget for the sheriff's department to pay for an SRO for that school. They are continuing to cover this SRO covers the Star Academy.
Okay. Well, I think it's necessary to cover all the schools. What's going on these days in
Yes.
these schools?
We still have a few vacancies of SROs, and the Sheriff's Department is working on to fill those.
Okay. We're on the consent agenda. Thank you, Madam Clerk. We will. Review applications and boards and committees. Any kind of recommendation or motion, please, on that?
Well, I'm still making a recommendation for Stanley Price since he's sending a request to be reappointed to that board. I understand the conversation we had at the last meeting that he had never attended a meeting. But if I have anybody serving in my district and they're not attending the meetings, I want to know about it. So I went to him and I asked him. And he said he had been attending the meetings. So my recommendation for it is that we continue to let him serve another term.
Come on, Stanley.
Stanley Park.
I agree with that. All right. Pleasure of the board. All those in favor of Mr. Price being reappointed, say aye.
Yeah.
Opposed? Ayes have it, Madam Clerk. So it looks like we have three alternate vacancies on the Board of Equalization and Adjustment, and that are not district sensitive. We have somebody who is the District 2 person, and somebody that's the District 4 person. I have not met the District 2 person, so I don't know what to tell you there, but whatever the pleasure of the board is.
I cannot recommend the person for District 4. Based on previous boards that he has served on, based on reports from those boards, I think it would be doing the Board of Adjustment a disservice to put him on even as an alternate.
Can accept your resignation.
Okay. All
I
right.
can accept that because you know your board. You know the people that's serving on those boards. And they should be qualified people. They're going to represent the county, they should represent the county. So,
Commissioner Matthews is familiar with Mr. Fairley. If he's all right with it, I'm all right with it. We want to go ahead and appoint him for District 2.
But anyway.
This time, there's a motion to appoint Mr. Fairley for the District 2 position on the Board of Adjustment.
Second.
So properly seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Ayes have it, Madam Clerk. All right, the county manager's report, Mr. Trout.
Thank you, Chairman. Just a few items to cover today. First one, I wanted to give you an update on what our staff is currently doing to assist in western North Carolina from the flooding that occurred. The Sheriff's Department, Sheriff's Office has sent 9 deputies to Haywood County to assist them. Sheriff also sent 2 telecommunicators to Henderson County to assist their 911 center. There will be a couple more deputies delivering some supplies to family, I believe, Wednesday. Our Harnett County Emergency Services Department also has been providing some assistance. We have an individual that is assisting Jackson County, another individual that went to the Central Branch Office of the North Carolina Emergency Management, eventually deployed to the Western Branch, and now has been moved to Asheville as more assets have come in, assisting with their water issues. We have another individual that was deployed to Haywood County to act as a liaison officer and public information officer for their emergency management folks. And they've been doing great work out there supporting that. We also know that there are other individuals that may be helping from other communities. We were informed that Dunn Emergency Services were providing an engine and a crew to Buncombe County. And we also know that we're doing some additional fundraising efforts, that the Harnett County Agriculture Center is accepting donations, and I know the Sheriff's Department, Commissioner Morris, and Clerk of Court are working on donations. And then, as was mentioned earlier, our airport director is going out to support the Rutherfordton Airport. They have a lot of activity going on there, and the airport director there needs assistance. So we are providing assistance to our folks out on the western side. It's been great to see others besides us. We know of other counties that they're offering up individuals, and so our prayers are with them as they continue their recovery efforts. And there may be more in the future that we need to provide, but that's where we're at for right now. Next item, if you are not aware, I mentioned, I think maybe before, but Allie Fouts Gaines, her last day is tomorrow, October 2nd. She's moving on to another position. We appreciate all the work that Allie has done in the last about 2 years of her service. Also, see Steve Ward is here. Steve, you want to introduce new deputy director?
Sure, I'd be glad to. This is Sean Bird. Sean is a Harnett County native, born and raised in Bun Level. Used to work for the town of Irwin and us, and has been in Holly Springs about the last 15 years. We're glad to have him back as the assistant director.
Welcome.
That's all I have, Chairman.
Okay. Mr. Counselor, is there a need for a closed session?
Yes, sir. Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that the board go into closed session for the following purpose. Consultation with and instructions to the county staff concerning the position to be taken by the county in negotiating proposed contracts, the acquisition of real property. I make this motion pursuant to NC General Statute, Section 143-318.11A5.
Second.
Motion has been made and properly seconded. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed? Ayes have it.